Hello and welcome to another episode of From A to Zinc, the podcast bringing clarity to the supplement industry. Today, we're joined by Dr. Marion Nestle, a powerhouse in the world of food policy, nutrition, and public health. As a professor at NYU and author of best-selling books like Food Politics and What to Eat, Dr. Nestle has spent decades challenging the status quo, exposing how industry influences our food choices, and fighting for transparency in nutrition. In this episode, we're taking a closer look at the world of supplement safety, how much regulation there really is, what companies are allowed to say, and why the label on your vitamins might not tell you the whole truth. And with so many people taking supplements, it will raise an important question. How can we make sure we actually know what we're putting into our bodies? Let's get started. So, let's start here. Most people assume supplements are tightly regulated as pharmaceutical or certain foods are. What's the truth when it comes to supplement regulation?
Well, basically, we don't have any. Due to an act of Congress in 1994, supplements were deregulated. And this came at the end of a long campaign by the supplement industry and people who take supplements to get the FDA out of trying to restrict supplements in any way. And so the result is that this is a largely unregulated industry in which manufacturers can say whatever they want to about their products as long as they word it carefully. There's been investigations that show that what the supplements say on the labels isn't really what they contain. And there are a lot of problems with them. Fortunately, most supplements are harmless, so they don't cause very much harm. They're a little on the expensive side, but most people can afford them. So it's one of those things where people think they do a lot of good, and even if they're placebos, there's something to be said for that.
So you've written a lot about industry influence in food and health. How does that, if it does, show up in the supplement world?
Well, the supplement industry is very interested in having as little regulation as possible so that they can market their products any way they want to. It's really interesting because more than half of American adults take supplements, and there's very, very little evidence that they make healthy people healthier. But people like to take them, so they do take them, and people who take supplements say they feel better when they take supplements. I think there's much to be said for that. Anything that makes you feel good these days is a good thing.
Proven or not proven, but catching on to that point, supplements often do make big health claims, like you said, whether it's about an ingredients or what they can do for immunity, for beauty, or for burning fat. What kind of oversight is there for those claims? Can companies, like you said, really say basically anything they want?
They can if they word it properly. Because the act in 1994 that deregulated supplements allowed for a new kind of health claim referred to as structure function. And these are claims that say that the supplement will maintain a structure or function or support a structure and function or be good for a structure or function of the body. So it can say promotes a healthy heart. It can say, supports strong bones, promotes cognition, but without really saying that it does anything for it. You don't have to have scientific substantiation for structure function claims. What they can't do is say, this will treat heart disease, this will prevent bone loss. It can't say that the supplement will treat, mitigate, or prevent a disease. It can only say that it will support a specific structure or function of the body. Nobody but a lawyer can tell the difference. In a sense, the supplement industry got what it wanted, which was the freedom to say anything it wanted about a product.
Another point is a lot of people and consumers really trust supplements because they're backed by studies, let's say. But you've written a lot about how industry-funded research can be misleading. Can you explain how this works and how consumers think more critically when they see those kind of claims? Because it's hard to navigate.
Well, if you see a claim that seems it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. Supplement companies fund studies to show that supplements have certain functions, but most independent research on supplements usually doesn't show any difference from a placebo effect. Now, mind you, I happen to be a big believer in placebos. I think they're fantastic. They don't do any harm and they make people feel better. And anything these days that makes you feel better is all to the good.
Not for your wallet.
Not for your wallet, but supplements aren't that expensive for most people. Some are, but most of them aren't. And the way that research influence works, food industry influence works, is in the way the research question is designed. It's so obvious that if I see a study with a title that says this particular supplement will prevent heart disease, will prevent diabetes, will prevent bone loss, will make you smarter, whatever, I can pretty well guess who paid for it. It's pretty obvious. One of the rules about supplement research is the better controlled the studies are, the less they show. So it's better to do uncontrolled studies if you want to get the answer that you want.
But still, to consumers, that's difficult, right? Because for you, it might seem easy to understand what is trustworthy and what is not. But a lot of people really hold on to those things, and it might even give them hope.
Well, I think that supplements make people feel better. And if you take a supplement and you feel better, that's really all you want to know. You don't want to know anything else.
That makes sense for a lot of people, I guess. If they're feeling better after taking something or think they notice a difference, that is often enough. But at the same time, I think there's a growing group of consumers who really do care about the science behind what they take, about the data. They're looking for real evidence and not just that good feeling. And the tricky part is when you take a new supplement, you might feel better, but is it the supplement? Is it the placebo? Did you just get a good night's sleep? Sometimes there is a degree of uncertainty. And because of that uncertainty in consumers, I think for a lot of people, it's about knowing that what you're putting into your body has been tested and has a purpose and that it's properly backed by science because they can't always tell for themselves if it's really working or not.
Placebo effects are extremely powerful. It's very difficult to demonstrate that a supplement is better than a placebo. For most of the things that supplements are taken for, I think that has some value. I'm not opposed to that.
And I would like to hear your personal take. If you could change one thing about how supplements are handled in public policy, what would it be and why?
Well, I'd like to have some regulation of them. I think, for example, the idea that there are supplements that are labeled as containing certain ingredients or not containing other ingredients, and those have been found not to be true statements. I think the labeling should reflect what's in the product and that somebody should be paying attention and checking every now and then, since the supplement manufacturers can't be trusted to do it, apparently. Some can, some can't. It's an interesting industry in that it's one of the few that is not very consolidated. And what I mean by that is that there are lots of industries where 3 or 4 companies dominate the entire space for that industry. But in supplements, even the big ones aren't that big. They'd only count for a very large percentage of the sales. So there are lots and lots of companies making supplements. The bigger ones have more to lose if they're found to be cheating. So I tend to trust the bigger ones better than the smaller ones. But the smaller ones advertise that they're smaller and are doing a better job. So if you want to believe that, that's fine.
Yeah, I have another question, which is, I heard you talk about GMO food. Do you think GMOs are also something people should be thinking about when it comes to supplement, or is that really more of a food issue?
I don't know what supplements would be. Insulin, some drugs are genetically modified. I'm having a hard time thinking of any supplements that might be. I mean, most supplement manufacturers are going to stay away from GMOs because their customer base isn't going to want that.
Okay, that is interesting to hear. I guess the reason I asked is because as a consumer, it's often hard to understand where supplement ingredients actually come from or how clean they really are. With food, you can often check if it's organic, where it's from, or even how it's grown. But with supplements, it's usually just the packaging, the brand, and the marketing claims, right? You don't really get a clear picture a lot of the times of how the ingredients were sourced or processed.
I mean, most of the supplement ingredients are chemicals or vitamins, but they're not genetically modified. They're not isolated from genetically modified organisms. I mean, maybe there are some, but I'd be very surprised.
What do you think is the role of the FDA generally? Do you think they are only stepping in when something goes wrong?
They're not allowed to do anything else. The Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994 essentially took the FDA out of regulating supplements, and so they're really not allowed to, unless there's something really terrible going on. If people were taking supplements and dying, the FDA would get involved.
Okay.
Short of that, they're not going to.
All right, let's move into a quick fire round. Just a few rapid questions where you can share your personal take, no overthinking, and of course, as always, this is not medical advice. This is just your own perspective. I wanted to know if there is any supplement you actually personally take or believe in yourself.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't take any. If somebody asks me and says, I really want to take supplements, what should I take? I generally say a 1 a day vitamin supplement would be okay. And if they're elderly and they're worried about it, then there's a brand that specializes in supplements for older people, but I don't take them. As I said, they're unlikely to be harmful, so I'm not concerned about that. Where you run into trouble with supplements is what we're seeing in Texas and New Mexico, with children who are not vaccinated and are being given very, very high amounts of vitamin A. Vitamin A is a fat-soluble vitamin. It accumulates in fat, and there are children who are presenting to doctors with vitamin A toxicity. When it comes to supplements, less is better.
I have a question. You have heard a lot in your career, so I wonder if there is any supplement-related myth that you heard that drove you crazy or that was especially bizarre.
The evidence behind supplements is extremely weak, and it's not for lack of trying. The Office of Dietary Supplements and the Office of Alternative and Complementary Medicine at NIH have both tried very, very hard to demonstrate that supplements are good for people. And sometimes they get studies that show that, but mostly they don't. And I've heard the directors of those agencies say that they did not set out to prove that supplements didn't work. They were hoping that the supplements did work and were disappointed that they didn't in these studies. But as I said, I don't think it matters, because even if it's a placebo effect, that's a very powerful effect.
Okay, now I have one last final question for you. If you could give people any advice when it comes to supplements, whether it's about choosing them, using them, or avoiding mistakes, what would it be?
Take 1 a day, and that'll take care of pretty much everything you need.
Super. Thank you very much for joining me and your interesting input and your view. Where can our listeners see more of you or keep up to date with you and your work?
Foodpolitics.com.
Super. Thank you so much. To wrap things up, let's take a moment to look at where all of this leads us. The supplement industry is one of the biggest and most influential in the health space, and yet it operates with surprisingly little oversight. That's largely because of a law passed in 1994, which means the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, which is the agency that usually oversees the safety of food, medicine, and other health-related products, doesn't really have the power to regulate supplements unless something goes seriously wrong. So for now, it's mostly up to the companies themselves to be trustworthy and police themselves. At the same time, supplement labels make bold claims, but as we heard, these are mostly structure-function claims like support memory or promote strong bones. They sound promising, but they don't require strong scientific proof. Add to that the fact that what's on the label doesn't always match what's in the bottle, and it raises real concerns about transparency. So what does that mean for us as consumers? Right now, it means that the responsibility falls on us. We have to ask questions about what's in the product, where it comes from, who's behind it, and whether there's real evidence behind the claims. Because if the system right now isn't doing the checking, we have to be more informed ourselves. And that leaves us with some important things to keep in mind. If regulation is this limited by design, should it stay that way? Is it realistic to expect companies to regulate themselves? Let me know what you think about this. You can write me a DM on @FromA2Zinc podcast on Instagram or an email to fromatozincpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening and see you next time.